Josh Allen looking deep, going deep.
To me, talking about the Bills, what else would you rather be doing?
We're hoping to add a new dimension to the Cover One network.
Slings it deep downfield, and it's caught inside the 20.
Right now, I just want to talk about this championship level. I've never had a championship caliber team to talk about.
I want to focus more on the storylines each week. What are the big stories going on with the Bills? What are thoughts, commentary? How do these things impact Buffalo?
Deep drop. Deep throw. And it is hauled in for the touchdown.
Allen deep to the end zone and caught for a touchdown.
Play action. Allen. Deep downfield. Wide open.
Welcome into a new edition of the Going Deep Podcast Wednesday special for us. Filling in here at the 7 o'clock slot, trading with distinguished coverage from yesterday, Mike. Lots to talk about. Preview show, Dawson Knox deal. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. Dawson Knox is extended. His long-term future is going to be with the Buffalo Bills. So yeah. I don't know how you can't feel pumped about that. And then the football season starts tomorrow night, and you're about to have your second child. So a lot of great things happening for all of us right now.
Yeah, I'm shocked I'm even here, Mike. I will be having my second child right on game day tomorrow. So I'll be, like I've said many times in the past couple months, I'll be enjoying the game on my huge 18-inch special from the suite of the hospital. So that'll be definitely have it recorded. Have to watch some film afterwards, but I'll do what I can to enjoy this game from the hospital. So that'll be a really interesting experience. So definitely a great day for me tomorrow for sure, for many reasons, as it is for all of Buffalo. A really great day. And it's a good day today for Dawson Knox. We're going to start there at the top, signing a 4-year extension. The Bills deciding to allocate their money to Dawson Knox, Mike. How you feeling about that? What's your initial thoughts of that? I had, from people that do know Dawson personally, I had it on good authority that he was never really going to consider leaving. So the Bills, he probably came to the Bills with like, hey, I'll stay here. Let's get this thing done. Bills obliged and paid him what they thought was market value. What is your initial reactions to that of allocating those assets one day before kickoff?
It's great news for Bills Mafia today. Dawson Knox is one of the fixtures of this franchise, this team right now. He's one of the top weapons on their offense, and they're giving him good money, but also fair money for where he's at right now. I believe his contract lines up to be the 6th highest paid tight end, but there's also a couple tight ends that are going to get their paydays in the next year that'll slide him down a few more spots. So the Bills are giving him a fair deal, but the Bills also aren't overpaying for him, in my opinion. And you always look back at those 90s teams and look at the guys that were key fixtures to those squads. Andre Reed, Thurman Thomas, Darryl Talley, Bruce Smith, Jim Kelly, on and on and on. And I feel like Dawson Knox is going to be one of those names going forward when looking back at this team in decades to come that you'll be naming as one of the weapons, one of the dominant players. Is he a top five tight end in the league yet? No, but he has been a success story going from a tight end that had 0 touchdowns in college to being a 3rd-round pick to now being one of the biggest red zone threats in the NFL. So good day to be a Bills fan.
Absolutely great day. And the numbers came in pretty nice. 4 years, $53.6 million, 31 guaranteed per Adam Schefter. Numbers look pretty good. Not quite sure how it breaks down yet and where exactly that'll fall, but definitely in the range of what they're expecting him to be. It's about what I had expected. I projected him right around there in my projection. So the Bills paid a little bit more than I anticipated, but also were a little bit lower on the guaranteed money. So that was really good to see. And I'm assuming they'll be really comfortable with the cap space situation going forward. They're able to maybe push a little bit into this year to take some of the burden away from the future years. We'll see how it all breaks down over the course of the next couple of weeks. But Mike, great for Dawson. Obviously, really good news. We have some football to talk about, and we have some live game coverage, pregame show here on the Going Deep podcast by the Cover One Podcast Network. There's matchups we need to get to, Mike. Matchups. And the first thing that noted, really no injuries across, obviously Trey White, but no real injuries on the Bills side. The Rams are missing Jefferson, which is a pretty good big miss for them, as they don't have a ton of depth, obviously not re-signing OBJ off of his injury. And all they have right now is Cooper Kupp, which is an all-pro, all-world receiver. Allen Robinson coming off of a really subpar year. We'll see what he's able to slot in to do against Dane Jackson, and then Ben Skoranek behind that. So not the world's plethora of options here for potentially Matt Stafford with elbow issues. So we're going to start right there at the top. How do you think that lines up with the Bills cornerback room? So you have Taron Johnson, who by all accounts is going to follow Cooper Kupp around all day, I'd expect. You're going to have like a Dane Jackson versus Allen Robinson, and then a Kyer Elam, Christian Benford versus, whoever that other player may be. How are you feeling about that first matchup, DBs versus receivers?
I don't think I'll know until I see tomorrow night. There's a lot of unknowns. This Rams offense has a lot of threats, but they are one that's a team both offensively and defensively a little bit overrated. Sure, they won the Super Bowl. Give them their credit. They have their share of superstars. You look at their offense, Cooper Kupp, one of the best players in the NFL, Matthew Stafford, a top 10 quarterback, Allen Robinson, a former top 10 wide receiver. They got some good running backs. They had a great offensive line and pass protection last year. But when I look at this offense, they're a team that was around 8th or 9th, I believe, in DVOA last year, or overall in points per game. So it's not like they were dominant by any means. The one thing that does give me a little bit of hope is with Jefferson out, that is a big break for the Bills. He is a talented deep threat. Kupp, he's going to get his catches. There's no stopping him from getting receptions. 140 plus last year. He's going to get a fair share on Thursday night. But Jefferson being out does help the Bills defense a little bit here. This is a Rams offense that's going to get used to a new offensive line. Are they going to be able to pass protect at a high level? And Robinson, what version of him are we going to see? He had a very down year last year in Chicago, but he's also playing with Justin Fields and subpar quarterbacks. So are we going to see a good Allen Robinson, or are we going to see a bad Allen Robinson? And then the same thing with the Bills' rookie corners. Are we going to see Kyer Elam come out and have a strong debut performance? Same with possibly Christian Benford. Or are they going to get exposed early in their first NFL action? I wish I could give a confident answer either way, but right now it's really wait and see. We really don't know what to expect either way with that.
Yeah, absolutely. That matchup so fascinating to me. I think I've been pounding like them missing Van Jefferson's a pretty big loss. I thought he played really well last year. He was a pretty underrated receiver. He was someone that I've watched from the draft. I've liked his film. I think that he's not really talked about. OBJ kind of stole a thunder as he went there late in the season, and then kind of played really well down the stretch. And I think the Rams are just assuming they get Odell Beckham Jr. back at some point. The Bills might have something to say about that based on how this goes. It does seem like Odell Beckham Jr. is going to play for one of the two rosters at this point. We never know how injuries might play out his scenarios. And I'm assuming he's waiting on that. Like, who has a receiver one job? What potential competitor might have a receiver one job for him?
Maybe Green Bay also in the picture.
Maybe Green Bay.
But yeah, you did hit a nail on the coffin right there with their wide receiver depth. They don't have any with Jefferson gone. And I love Ben Skoranek. I'll be honest, I'm a big fan of him. I covered him when he was in high school in Indiana. You know how I'm biased to all those guys that I used to cover. But if that's your number 3, you got some work to do. So that is some good news for the Bills secondary, knowing that with Cooper Kupp, you have Taron Johnson, one of the top slot corners in the league, going up against Cooper Kupp at most times. And maybe that'll help ease in some of these younger corners next to Dane Jackson with Elam and Benford. But there is some positives when you look at it on paper for the Bills.
Yeah, there is. And I think it's a really good matchup for the Bills on the defensive side of the ball. We're going to see, I mean, they have a bunch of players coming off of injury. You don't know, like they've had mixing and matching with Cam Akers throughout the end of the last year at the running back position. The Bills match up pretty well, believe it or not. I believe they match up fairly well with the team. Austin Corbett's a big loss for them this year. There is definitely some places for the Bills to take advantage with their revamped defensive line. And one that we've talked about a lot on the Going Deep podcast with Greg Rousseau coming into his own, obviously Von Miller, and then Jones, and then what Settle can do behind them, and obviously at Oliver. Like, I mean, that's just a solid defensive line. And how will this Rams offensive line now kind of relate to that? I just don't think they have the pieces in place right now to kind of go against what the Bills are going to be able to do. We always talk about how the defense is ahead of the offense in the first place early on, late in preseason, early on in the regular season. And they have a lot of work to do with Noteboom, who's going to be taking over for one of the best guys to ever, kind of be in the league. One of the best in Whitworth. And I mean, it's going to be a challenge, David Edwards, Brian Allen, Shelton Coleman. So, I mean, there's definitely some challenges there on the offensive line for the Rams. They're missing some of their best weapons. Really behind all that, they have Tyler Higbee, who's going to really be their third weapon in this offense, as there's not a ton else. They saw a little bit from Bryce Perkins last year in the Super Bowl. He's a guy I'm watching out for here tomorrow. I think that he could present some challenges as a second tight end. And just, do we see Tutu Atwell? There's been some buzz out of LA that I've been reading about, that I've had some talk to some Rams people about. Lance McCutcheon, a college free agent receiver that they like a little bit. Brandon Powell, ex-Bill, is also on their depth chart. These are guys that I just don't mean to be cocky, do not make the Bills roster. None of them. Even your Ben Skoranek would have a really hard time making the Bills' current roster. So I just don't see it. Allen Robinson and Cooper Kupp are definitely gamers. They're definitely good players. If Allen Robinson's coming off of an injury, didn't play well at all last year. We've talked about Cam Akers coming off of an Achilles, wasn't able to really play much last year. Darrell Henderson seems to always be hurt. They've got some mixing and matching on the offensive line. This isn't your Odell Beckham Jr. and end of the year last year. And then Stafford's injured. So this isn't your standard, what you think will be buzzing on all cylinders Rams offense yet. Could it be in 6 to 8 weeks? Yes. I do want to play the Rams early on in the year, though. That's where I would prefer to play them, as compared to another team that might not, that might be better today than they will be down the road. The Rams might be the opposite. I don't know that they'll be as good today in the next couple of weeks that they will be maybe in week 8, week 9, week 10. This is the time I'd want to try to catch the Rams, because quite frankly, by all accounts, Mike, Matt Stafford should be receiving Tommy John surgery. That's what I've been hearing.
His injury is very interesting, especially they compare it to baseball pitchers with how the arm is working. And it's not something that just gets better over time. It's something you have to deal with, which is a little concerning if you're thinking about his long-term future. Short-term, it sounds like he can get by and that he's okay with it. But yeah, you're right about the Rams. They're a weird team. So if you go to Pro Football Reference, they have the Pythagorean win-loss totals, which based on your stats, it projects where they think you should have finished. And the Rams went 12-5 last year in the regular season, I believe. And the Pythagorean win-loss record on Pro Football Reference had them as a 10.5 win team, which means they outperformed their actual statistics on paper. And when you look at their stats, their box scores, they don't really blow you away. They weren't a dominant running team. They are a good passing team, but they also had more weapons last year. Like you said, they had Robert Woods for the first half of the year. Then when he goes down, they had OBJ to replace him, Van Jefferson. So you're missing a lot of your depth at wide receiver. Could that impact their passing game? I think that definitely could impact their passing game. I'd expect them to try to go after Elam, go after Jackson with Allen Robinson early, try to see if they can go deep, maybe get them on some moves early on. But I expect the Rams to have a running first approach in this game for the most part. I'm not saying they're going to run it 5 million times, but the Rams are a team where I think we get caught up in all the names. But when you actually break them down, they're a team that really just got hot in the playoffs and right before the season ended, and they took it to a Super Bowl. But they won their last 3 games in the playoffs by a total of 3 points per game. They beat Tampa Bay by 3 in the divisional round, beat San Fran by 3 in the NFC Championship, and then had to come back late to beat Cincinnati by 3 in the Super Bowl. This is not a dominant team. And when you really look at it on paper, if the Bills were to face the Rams last year in the Super Bowl, the Bills would have been the favorite. And have a good chance we'd be talking about the Bills being the defending Super Bowl champs and not the Rams at this point in time. You break down the rosters, the Bills have way more quality depth, in my opinion. They have a more well-rounded offense and defense. The only thing that really makes you pick the Rams in this game is really the game is in Los Angeles, and you have the Super Bowl in your memory. And the Bills, unfortunately for them, last year were very poor in one-score games, and they have a history of sometimes falling short in big contests. But if you were looking at just like the rosters, the matchups, how things would shape up if this was a neutral field, I'm picking the Bills most days.
Yeah, and what's interesting to me is tickets are actually cheaper in LA, meaning going to be more Bills fans. When tickets drop like that, that means other teams' fans can go out and make the trip. They can actually budget it a little bit better than the Bills' November home games against, say, Cleveland. Actually, right now, the tickets for tomorrow are cheaper than that, Mike. So you can make decisions to be there if you're close to the West Coast, if you have the ability to make a flight out there, as we've seen so much throughout these videos and these airplane videos, and we'll see throughout the day tomorrow, or you guys will, I won't be, but you guys will be seeing throughout the day tomorrow on social media, etc. So to me, it's a matter of, I don't know if there's home field advantage. Even they've been on there saying, like, I don't put the Rams in home field advantage in this because it might be fairly split. There was a lot of Bengals fans there last year. It might be fairly split. On top of the weather's, pretty premier. It's a little hot, but they all have to play in it. So, right now, I don't know if there's really a home field advantage in this situation, but still, a thing that scares me is the cornerback room. We don't know what we're going to get from it. That's why we're spending a little bit of time talking about it. I'm unsure how that's going to play out, but it isn't the world's craziest task right now. They're not that deep. Cooper Kupp's going to get his against anybody. He does, whether it's Trey White or whether it's, Taron Johnson. I don't know that you see Trey White versus Cooper Kupp. I don't know. You might, but I'm not exactly sure. And McDermott has shown a propensity to switch to that occasionally. But if he was playing in the slot and he's lined up in the slot, he's going to see Taron Johnson, and he was going to see Taron Johnson whether Trey White's playing or not. So to me, it's a matter of, yes, I'd prefer to have Trey White on Allen Robinson and Dane Jackson against whomever they decide to start tomorrow, but a matter of all of the DBs. I still think the Bills would have gone veteran if they were nervous. And this is McDermott's bread and butter. He's a DB. He coaches DBs. Even when the team's bad, the 1 year under McDermott, actually, you can say that they were bad. They got a lot out of their DBs. They got a lot out of Levi Wallace, who, by the way, Levi Wallace is now benched in Pittsburgh. Just needed to take a chance to shout that out. 4th on the depth chart there for a reason. But that's what McDermott was able to get out of his DBs. So to me, it's a matter of, let's see what these young guys can do. Otherwise, you would have brought in Joe Hayden. You would have done stuff on the veteran front, especially during training camp. The Bills feel pretty good. They saw Christian Benford and were like, okay, we don't need to go get a veteran. We'll see Trey White in 4 to 5 weeks. I don't know exactly where that's going to play out. The Bills still felt pretty good about Trey White to take it to the last second. I do believe they would have put him on the pup a little bit earlier if they were for sure known he needed 4 to 6 to 8 weeks. I do think he probably comes pretty close to that at the 4 to 5 week mark. But if you look at tomorrow, I think the Bills have an exact and a really great advantage on the defensive line against their O-line. You're going to come out. This isn't your standard line that they've had in years past. There's some mixing and matching going to go on. And now with the pass rush, I do believe early on in this game, the Bills are going to have an advantage D-line on their O-line. And that could help out the cornerback room. And that's the age-old method of, do DNs matter more than corners? Because, hey, if you can get to the quarterback or get close to getting to the quarterback, it takes a lot of pressure off your corners, Mike. And I think that's my first matchup and keys to the game is, what are these tackles going to be able to do against Gregory Rousseau and Von Miller? Because Rob Havenstein going to be able to accomplish what he needs to on the right side? Is Joe Noteboom going to be able to fill in for one of the emotional leaders, whatever you want to say about him in Whitworth, so that's kind of a lot to think about to me. And then missing Corbett as well in the interior. I don't know, Mike, that is the Bills' key to the game right now. And it's the Bills' defensive line and what it's going to be able to do against an offense that's going to try to find its way. And the Bills are going to do whatever they can, in my opinion, to cover Cooper Kupp. They're going to let him get his, but that is what they want to do. Stop the run and make Stafford. And let's see what his arm can do coming off of this injury.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with saying the Bills' defensive line against the Rams' offensive line is one of the primary focuses of this game. With the guys that they lost on their line, Whitworth, you don't simply replace a guy like that. And he's a major reason why the Rams were the top pass protecting team in the NFL last year. You're going up against Von Miller and Gregory Rousseau, a retooled defensive line that has the ability to, hopefully, if everything gels the way we're expecting it to this year, get some interior pressure as well, collapse the pocket. That could create a lot of potentially problems for the LA Rams offense tomorrow, especially since this was a team that honestly wasn't even gelling on all cylinders when they were getting that elite pass protection last year. So if you're talking about Matt Stafford getting pressured and only having Kupp and Allen Robinson not really having the amount of weapons he had last year to spread the ball around, it could be a difficult day for the Rams and for Stafford overall. But that's all contingent on the Bills' pass rush being there. I think we're confident in Von Miller's ability to get to the quarterback. And in a big game like this, he's going to want to make a splash play or two. But is Greg Rousseau, are AJ Epineza or Boogie Basham, Tim Settle, Ed Oliver, are they going to be able to get some penetration? Jordan Phillips, if he's in the game, is Daquan Jones going to be able to eat up some space, help stop the run game? We'll see. I have confidence in them, but until they go out and they actually perform, it's just words. So, but that's definitely probably one of the biggest matchups in this game beyond the cornerback battle versus Kupp and Robinson. But ultimately, depending on how the D-line does, that might make potentially Kaiir Elam, Dane Jackson's job that much more easier if they're able to generate that pressure.
Yeah, for sure. And once again, that's two big pieces of their offensive line that will be missing tomorrow. They're going to be missing, once again, no Van Jefferson, no Odell Beckham Jr. That's just so many pieces from their offense from last season that at some point that's gonna sting you. They've since moved on from Sonny Michel. He hasn't played great lately, but was still a depth piece there. There's a lot to consider that goes into this room. They had already, kind of weak behind Tyler Higbee. I think he was out a little bit in the Super Bowl, and they had to go to Bryson Hopkins there in that game. So there's just a lot that goes into that. They had Gerald Everett in years past, who was another good depth piece for them, really, really solid blocking and receiving tight end. Since moved away last season from them. So their offense is rebuilding. I hate to say that. They have their Cooper Kupp away. Let's say they didn't have Kupp or he was hurt, from being in trouble. Like it's to me that challenging of an offense to where if Kupp is going and the Bills don't have an answer and they just can't figure it out, well, that's a problem because he's that good. But outside of that, and every team, even the Panthers have Christian McCaffrey. Every team should have a close to a star or somewhat of a star. So maybe some of those drought Bills teams didn't, but Cooper Kupp is going to be the game, the difference of this game. The Bills are going to let him do his a little bit. And I do believe they're going to do whatever they can to stop the run. They're not going to let Cam Akers beat them. They're going to have to play really sound run defense because then they're going to put them in passing situations. And then they're going to be able to use their zones, use Taron Johnson and Micah Hyde and maybe a linebacker in those easy flat zones to help cover Cooper Kupp. And let the Bills feast on the defense that they know how to play a little bit of man. I like the man cover option too. Man up Taron, put a little cover spy on Cooper Kupp. Matt Stafford's not going to kill you with his legs, even if he makes a play here or there. I don't know how accurate he's going to be tomorrow. I just don't. Will he be stronger later in the year? I don't know how these elbow things work. From my knowledge of baseball, it's not how it works. You need operation. You need surgery at some point, and you're going to have to rehab it. So I don't know if halfway through the year he becomes better and healthier, or if he's going to be one of those things where he loses half of this year to prepare to be ready to go for next year. I'm not exactly sure how the Stafford thing is going to be playing out, but that elbow thing is never good. It's no bueno. You saw it really take Ben Roethlisberger's career, Mike. So it's just no bueno to have that elbow. You can try to get through it in football, unlike as a pitcher. You don't need to throw 100 miles an hour. So there is definitely, you can definitely play around a little bit and not need that velocity that a relief pitcher might need. But Matt Stafford, this isn't the end of his elbow issues, Mike. He's going to need something, whether it's this season or to end this season. And he's going to need some type of at least small or medium operation or large operation there on the elbow. But let's flip the sides of the ball, Mike. We talked enough about the Bills defense and the Rams offense. There's a whole nother side, exciting side of the ball to talk about and definitely want to get into it just a little bit. But first, need everybody to remember to subscribe to One Pass. We have Cover One Buffalo here on the Cover One podcast number coming up right after Mike and myself. So make sure you get out there. You get a cool t-shirt. We've seen some really cool people in those shirts. So get out there, check it out. You get a lot. And if you want more of these breakdowns from Eric Turner, from Greg, from Anthony, from Kendall, get out there and you get some special coverage, some special stuff. Get out there and subscribe to Cover One Pass. We have to flip the sides of the ball now, Mike. We got to talk about the Bills offense versus the Rams defense. Another interesting battle, some changes again on the Rams defensive side. How are you feeling? Just give me your brief synopsis of the Bills offense as it compares to the Rams defense and some of the changes, one of being losing Von Miller.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very intriguing matchup. Bills offense versus Rams defense. Obviously, you have Stephon Diggs being covered by Jalen Ramsey, which is an elite matchup. Ramsey is one of the best corners in the NFL. Stephon Diggs, one of the best wideouts. As much as you want Diggs to go off, I'd say that Ramsey will probably hold him in check somewhat, which means you're going to have to find other guys stepping up on Thursday night. And then the second big matchup is Aaron Donald against the Bills offensive line. Are you able to contain Donald, or is he going to go off and just beast on your offense? So those are going to be the two biggest matchups that you're looking at. Not having to deal with Von Miller is a huge plus, having him on the Bills instead of him being in LA, because that'd be just another dynamic that the Bills would have to prepare for. But overall, I think the Bills offense is deep enough, especially in the wide receiver room, and then having a top-end tight end like Dawson Knox, to where they should still be able to move the ball and have success against the Rams defense. Will LA be able to shut down Diggs at times? Probably. They probably will. But that's why you have Gabe Davis. That's why you have Isaiah McKenzie, Jamison Crowder, to put different dynamics in the game. You got Dawson Knox, who's going to be a matchup nightmare anytime you're in the red zone. And really, what we've been talking about the entire late part of the summer onward is the Bills are trying to develop a running attack to where they're not totally one-sided. Will their running game ever be their primary focus? Probably not in most games that aren't bad weather related. But paying attention to Aaron Kromer and the changes to the Bills' offensive line, it's all been designed to improve the Bills' rushing attack so they can have more ways of attacking defenses. And I think the Rams are a perfect opponent to try it out against to start out on Thursday night. I expect the Bills to have a successful night. I'm not going to say I think they're going to score 30-plus points, but I do think this is going to be a game that's played in the mid-20s overall.
What's an interesting point is Aaron Donald was like, whether he was serious or not, was like considering retirement. He's swinging helmets at practice against other teams. Like, where is his mindset after the celebration, as noted here, like the celebration that they have pregame? Like there's definitely some of this mindset. And there's been good talks about the Bills are still hungry. Are the Rams fed? Have they already eaten? Have they already got their supper? Some teams under Brady, no, that was never the answer. They were always still hungry and they were always still good. And Brady is still always playing like that. Occasionally with others as well. Mahomes seems to be the same way. Oh, they've only won once, but you're always going to get the best from them in the prime time. You're just always beside the one where the Bills slammed him last year. Mahomes is still very, very good when it matters and still very good in the playoffs. But what do we see from this team? Like you've already said earlier in the show, were the Rams the best team in the playoffs last year? Were they the best team that was left? For sure, 100%. Were they the best team, though? They were definitely not. I remember the Bills, if you could have got by the Chiefs, you liked your path compared to what it could have been. You really did. You liked what your path was going to be able to do. And the Bills played better in the two games that they had and unfortunately lost one due to bad coaching, special teams coaching, due to just prevent defenses that needed to change. Didn't like what Levi Wallace was doing on any of those plays at the end of the game. But the matter of fact is this: the Bills played better in those two games than the Rams did over their four. So for me, what does that mean? So yes, they lasted, and just like in college basketball, Mike, you all know, well too well, it's about your path, and the Rams were able to succeed in their path. What does that mean for this year? I don't think that automatically makes them the best team in the NFC. That's all I'm trying to say here.
I think that's a fair point. And to be honest, the way North American sports are played, it's about tournaments and playoffs. And playoffs aren't the best way to determine who the best team are. But that's not what entertainment is about. The biggest mistake we have as fans is that we normally define greatness and the best teams based on how many championships you have. Yes, championships are a good indicator of who's good because you have to be a great team to make the playoffs. And then you're beating good teams in the process to win a championship. But there's a lot of luck that goes into determining who gets where. And like you said, sometimes it's your path. Sometimes It's a team that lost before they ever matched up to you. I don't think anybody would say that the Rams are better than the Kansas City Chiefs last year if they would have faced off in the Super Bowl. The Rams were the 4 seed in the NFC, and they played the 4 seed in the AFC. It's one of those things where when you break down the numbers, the Bills were one of those teams where they were dominant last year, but they just could not win their close games. And over time, that would normally indicate that the Bills were a better team than their record, and they fell on some bad luck, while the Rams were a team that won a lot of close games. They found a way to win the tough games, grind out victories, and give them all the credit in the world for being able to do that, because the Bills, as we saw last year, weren't able to. But that doesn't tend to align with long-term success. Good for them to win the Super Bowl. That in the end, that's all that really matters. But I'm not going to anoint the Rams as the next coming of the Patriots or anything like that. They're a well-coached team. They got a good quarterback. They have solid weapons. And as long as they have an owner spending the money to get the players that they acquire, they're going to be competitive. But the Bills are every bit as deep, if not deeper. And realistically, this is going to be a great game on paper. It could go either way. It's a 50-50 contest. This is what you love to see to open the year. And when you're talking about hunger, you're right. Sometimes you get a team that wins the Super Bowl, they enter the season opener. Maybe they don't have that hunger that they had in past years. I think it helps the Rams that they're playing a team that's already being anointed as the Super Bowl favorites when they're the defending champs. So I do think that does feed them a little bit of bulletin board material. Hell no, we're not going to let the Bills come to our house, ruin our celebration, and then be the favorites going forward. So I do think the Rams will have some hunger entering this year, at least for this game going forward.
And the Rams don't draft particularly well, so they don't backfill these losses.
They don't draft at all. They trade their picks.
Exactly. So we just talk, and they don't draft, and they do have picks. Honestly, they trade their top picks. They draft terribly in the middle rounds. Like, quite frankly, their best player, 19, 20, or 21, with all their draft picks, I mean, it might be Van Jefferson, their second-round pick in 2020. He's been probably their better, younger player on the roster. You know, anytime reasonably soon, basically going back to like Cooper Kupp, like you really are looking at Van Jefferson, who isn't playing. And then if you really look at last year, their most recent high pick in the second round, Tutu Atwell, a guy that's maybe the 5th receiver on their depth chart right now. We'll see how that plays out tomorrow. But he's just a guy that's never done anything in his first year last year. And then we'll see what he's able to do this year. But if he can't beat out your guy, Ben Skronik, he's struggling against Brandon Powell, ex-Bill. You know, what does that mean for you? So right now they don't draft well at all. The Rams do not backfill these positions. They go out and use vet money. They used they pull other draft picks into trade. And at some point, those guys either move on, like you saw with Von Miller. They're, currently hurt like OBJ. You lose an Austin Corbett, who is a veteran from Cleveland. So there's definitely some issues there because they're a vet-heavy team, and they were actually proof that you can build by the vets. And the Bills kind of go along with, not to that extent. Brandon Beane drafts extremely well. They kind of do the best of both worlds, but the Bills are kind of like in that realm of like, if we fill out our roster, we generally want those vets in those positions. But now the Bills are still kind of gearing toward like, hey, we still need young, talented players like Khalil Shakir, James Cook, still holding on to Zach Moss, things like that, because that's really where your roster is built. And then maybe not looking at the vet Tavon Austin, et cetera, the route of the vet way to fill out your roster like they've done in the past. So the Rams have struggled in the draft. They don't use draft picks, like you said. They trade them away. They leverage it, and it worked last year. It really did. It gave them the push that they needed. Sometimes, I wish the Bills maybe made that push. Brandon Beane once again said he was interested in Von Miller. I don't believe he wanted to pay a 2 and a 3, which essentially is what, Mike? That would have been James Cook and Bernard. So like, you can't really. That's challenging when you're able to then maybe target Von Miller the following year, anyways. So that's a lot to think about. Where it was enough for the Rams to go out and do, but if you look at matchups, I really think the offense of the Bills to the Rams defense is going to be the premier matchup. I think there's going to be, you have Jalen Ramsey, you have Bobby Wagner, you have Aaron Donald, you have some of their decent safety play in Jordan Fuller. They like Nick Scott a little bit. So there's definitely some good matchup there to talk about. And I think the one thing the Bills are going to want to do tomorrow, Mike, is run the ball. I think the Bills are going to run the ball a little bit to kind of prove like, hey, we're here. We can throw it as well as anyone, proven. we're going to run the ball a little bit tomorrow, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see how the Bills address the running back room heading into this game. Are we going to see all the three main guys active, or is one of them going to be inactive? That'll go pretty far into how the Bills offense will attack teams this season too. Because if you're going to have Singletary, Moss, and Cook all active, you're definitely going to be using them. You're not having them all three active to just be having one as window dressing over here. So especially when it's going to cost another player some time on during game day. So I'm really interested. I've been intrigued by how the Bills have used their running back room all offseason, with Cook being more the pass catching guy, Moss short game, short yardage situations, pass protection, and Singletary being the main guy overall. And then you look at the offensive line with Saffold in the mix, right? Bates at right guard, and even now Spencer Brown finally back at right tackle. They have the guys to be a little bit more physical and be a better running team going forward this year compared to where they were at this point last year. So definitely could see that being a possibility tomorrow night.
Yeah, and the Bills, look, the roster is going to say a third, and a second. James Cook was the end of the second. So really they've sunk some picks into the running back room, right around the same range. Yes, Cook was a little bit higher than the rest, but not by much. He was really at the end. The Bills had traded down twice. He was really at the end of the second round. So the Bills have really built the room with young talent, one per year almost. So it's going to be interesting. And that's what's going to get me to my final topic of today, Mike, is the inactives. What are the Bills going to do? Like, what are you going to look at? Like, who do you think doesn't play? They have to sit 5 players tomorrow, Mike. And I just, to me, it's an interesting debate on what do they do? Like, do they bench, Moss? I think Shakir's their starting returner. They have to play him. Is Crowder going to suit up? Do you have any opinions on how that's going to look as we roll through game day? I mean, obviously, you're probably going to sit Quentin Morris as one of them. You're probably going to sit one of the linemen, whether it's Bobby Hart or Tommy Doyle, based on Tommy Doyle's health. There's 2. But what do they do from there? Do you bench Cam Lewis? He's a special teamer.
Lewis could be one of them, and then you're probably looking at maybe Shaq Lawson if he's the 5th defensive end. And then you got to just get one more. And typically you would look at that running back room, but that's why I find it interesting. You have some people talking about James Cook is the real interesting one here. How quickly do they want to make him a big part of this offense? Because it sounds like if you're listening to the press conferences, it sounds like they want to ease him in, that they don't want to just throw him everything day one. That leads me to think that Devin Singletary is going to get the bulk of everything the first few weeks of the season. But is James Cook the second option? Is Moss the second option? We'll see. You would typically think that James Cook would be the second option based on him being a high round draft pick this year. But Moss is, like as you mentioned, a former 3rd round pick entering his 3rd year in the league. Has James Cook done enough to leapfrog Moss at the beginning of the season? Or are the Bills coaching staff going to make him earn his role? Because as good as a player as James Cook could potentially be in the future with his explosiveness and his skill set, Zach Moss is a talented pass protector, and he is able to be a decent receiver out of the backfield. And it looks like they want to use him in short yardage situations, regardless of his success in those types of situations in the past. So that'll be a key area, because do you trust a rookie right away, prime time against the defending Super Bowl champs? We'll see. If they have all 3 active, that'll give us some of the answers for how they're probably going to attack the season.
Right. And and Balin Spector will probably be the other inactive as well. Him versus Cam Lewis, they may need one on special teams. Do they inactivate both? That would mean good things for seeing multiple running backs tomorrow in the game. I just, will we see Terrell Bernard? There's so many things that they could do that the Bills, we're just thinking that they'll have plans for every single player on the roster. But realistically, as the roster allows it to be pretty healthy right now, besides Trey, 5 players have to sit tomorrow. So that's a lot. And, we want to see almost all of them. Maybe, don't need the extra lineman. Sure, whether it's Spector sitting, that's fine. Will they, I guess, with the lack of depth at the corner room, maybe they could feel good about sitting Cam Lewis. I do want to see Shaq Lawson. Like, I do think that getting after it might be an important thing. I don't think you need to scratch Shaq, Cam, and Spector. I do think it's probably 2 of the 3. So whatever one they deem to be more important, will go tomorrow. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting battle where usually there's injuries to consider here at the inactive spot. But the Bills are going to tell us really early on what their plans are for the rookies, what their plans are for their DNs, and what their plans are for the corner room, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be nice to finally have those answers on the field rather than be guessing as we have been all training camp, all preseason, and even before that during the draft and mini camp. So finally, after a whole offseason of waiting, we're going to get at least a few answers to how things are going to be, and what better opponent than the defending Super Bowl champs to show what you're capable of, especially in a season where you're expecting to compete for that Lombardi.
And I would be remiss to not mention Underdog Fantasy. Get out there. It's still time. It's going to be time all year to join one of the best fantasy platforms out there. Use promo code COVER1 to match $100 on your first deposit. Really cool. One of the best fantasy apps out there. Set the best ball lineup where you don't need to set your lineup each week. Season-long leagues. It's fun. It's really good to supplement your fantasy leagues that you might have out there. It's really cool to have. So make sure you get out there and try Underdog Fantasy and use promo code COVER1 to match up to $100 here for kickoff tomorrow, Mike. But we have Cover One Buffalo coming up here very shortly. So tune into Greg and Aaron. They're going to have a really good guest, I believe, on from the Rams side. So I'm pretty excited about that. And you'll be able to hear their side of this. You heard our side of it. You'll hear our predictions. And next week, Mike, going to have a great Titans guest on the Going Deep podcast at a regular time slot, 7:00 Tuesday, with TikTok Titans. Really good. Been on the show many years. Really good. Pretty pro Titans, obviously, but gives them good insight and picks the Bills every year. So we'll definitely see what the Titans are doing next week here on the show, and we'll have time to kind of recap the Bills game, but we'll be almost a week out from that at that point. So that's really interesting to think about. But from the Going Deep podcast, going to keep it short today. Lots to talk about here on the.
Hey, you got to make your pick
Buffalo
before
show.
we end. We
have to make picks. Mike, we're going to bounce it to you first. Give us a pick.
All right. I've been back and forth. I'm sorry to just throw this on you, but I got to get my pick out there.
I got picks.
Bills favored by 2.5. At first, I was leaning LA Rams. I'm going to go Bills 27-24. They're going to cover, and they're going to get off to a nice start entering week 2 home opener Monday Night Football against the Tennessee Titans. It's going to be a celebration tomorrow night in Los Angeles for the Buffalo Bills and their fan base.
I think the Bills are going to come out on all cylinders. I really do. I think that there's something to that. I think there's something to still being hungry and proving that they're here to stay. I don't think you're going to go and see a dud tomorrow. I just don't think you see that. Josh Allen, anything's possible. The over-under is 52. So I'm very close to that number. I think it will be right at 52. It will be right around there, but I'm going to go the under. I'm going to say 51. I really think that it's going to be 31-20 Buffalo tomorrow. And just on, I think the Bills are going to run the ball particularly well. I think the Rams are going to put some pressure on at times, but I do believe the Bills are better. I think they're the better team, especially tomorrow. How it looks at the end of the year and or Super Bowl matchup, I don't believe this will be the Super Bowl. But if it is, maybe it'll look a lot different then. But I do believe tomorrow with Stafford's injury and everything that's going on their offense, I don't know if their offense is going to be very good tomorrow, period. And I think 31-20 is the number that's been sticking to me, as their defense will make some plays. The Ram defense will make some plays and keep them in it in stretches. So from the Going Deep podcast, you have 2 Bills victories coming up. You have Terry coming on next week to cover from the Titans. Really good Locked On Titans. Get out there and check him out as well for next week. But we have a lot to talk about tonight. We have a Rams guest on the Cover One Buffalo show, and we're looking forward to Bills football being back in prime time. Enjoy it, guys. Enjoy Thursday. Enjoy all the coverage. Enjoy the day of the national spotlight being on Buffalo and LA. So from the Going Deep podcast, Kevin, Mike, looking forward to coming at you next week live, Tuesday at our normal slot. We'll catch you soon, and Cover One Buffalo's to come here in just an hour. So we'll talk to you guys soon, and enjoy football being back.
Josh Allen looking deep, going deep.
To me, talking about the Bills, what else would you rather be doing?
We're hoping to add a new dimension to the Cover One network.
Slings it deep downfield, and it's caught inside the 20.
Right now, I just want to talk about this championship level. I've never had a championship caliber team to talk about.
I want to focus more on the storylines each week. What are the big stories going on with the Bills? What are thoughts, commentary. How do these things impact Buffalo?
Deep drop. Deep throw. And it is hauled in for the touchdown.
Allen deep to the end zone and caught for a touchdown.
Play action. Allen